Hello friends, my name is TheRealEmile and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're going to be taking a look at some retro hot hatches, and if everything goes to plan tomorrow, we'll be taking a look at some of their modern equivalents. Now, retro hot hatches are one of my favourite classes of vehicles in the world. I love them. I love the simplicity. I also love the idea of the fact that you can have a car which is super quick and super fun, yet can take your family to the shops or do fairly normal tasks in everyday life. And we start with the oldest hot hatch available here in Forza Motorsport 6 currently. This is the Ford Fiesta XR2, 84 horsepower, 1,852 pounds of weight. Now, this isn't the original hot hatch. I believe there was the Vauxhall Chevette and the Talbot Sunbeam as well. However, this is what I've sort of got to work with in Forza Motorsport 6. The Fiesta XR2 is a very old car. This is from 1981, I believe, so this is a 34-year-old car. However, the handling isn't actually as bad as you'd expect it to be. There isn't too much lean when it comes to this vehicle. That can sometimes be a bit of an issue with these older vehicles, but the suspension isn't nearly as bad as it actually looks on the camera. As well as that, 84 horsepower does mean it's slow, however it is quite a lot of fun to throw it into the corners. Yeah, it's a pretty decent car. Obviously, as far as understeer and oversteer goes, well, there's not really much oversteer because it's got 84 horsepower and it's front wheel drive, and there's not too much understeer because it isn't particularly powerful, so it can get away with it. You will see occasionally through the corners, and indeed actually with quite a few of these retro hot hatches, you'll see them sort of smoking one wheel through a corner. That doesn't necessarily mean the car's a bad handling vehicle. It just seems like what the cars do on this game. I'm not quite sure why they do it, but it's just something they do, and it doesn't really affect the handling at all. It doesn't mean it's a particularly bad car to drive, it just basically means that's what Forza's doing with it. Similar to that Fiesta, we then have the 3 years older variant, kind of. This is the Volkswagen Rabbit, also known as the Mark 1 Golf GTI, 90 horsepower, 2,100 pounds. So this weighs 300 more pounds than the Fiesta, however it does have 6 more horsepower. Ultimately, in Forza Motorsport 5, I said the Golf GTI was probably one of the most fun cars to drive. It's just so much fun to throw this into the corners. However, around the Top Gear test track, obviously fun doesn't mean good lap time. And also, this is a track with a lot more straight line bits. I was more thinking sort of Catalunya school circuit for this vehicle. However, yeah, the Golf GTI was pretty okay around here. It was fun, like the Fiesta was. Very similar to Fiesta. In fact, there's really not too much difference between this and the Fiesta, other than the fact that this is maybe a little bit slower. It does feel maybe a tad slower than the Fiesta. You really can't tell too much when you're driving this vehicle between them, to be honest with you. They drive pretty much the same. And yeah, so the GTI Golf, yeah, it was alright. Of course, both Fiesta and this will not be the fastest cars around here. In fact, they will probably be the slowest. This much we know. However, which one's going to win out the Fiesta and the Golf? I'm not sure. Personally, to drive, I think the Fiesta might have the slight advantage this time around. It just weighs a little bit less, which means it's a little bit better through the corners. Moving on to 1992, and we have the Ford Escort Cosworth, 224 horsepower, 2,811 pounds. This is the only four-wheel drive car we have here today. This is sort of when, I believe this was the first hot hatch to have four-wheel drive, actually. I'm going to class it as a hot hatch because it is a hatchback, and yeah, so yeah, there you go. Anyway, the Escort Cosworth is a very nice car to drive. I like this car a lot. I've always liked the Escort Cosworth. I think it looks mental. And yeah, it drives really, really well, actually, this car. Yeah, there's not too much understeer from it. Because although it does have four-wheel drive, it doesn't really have too much power. And it's actually, you know, four-wheel drive systems are weird. You either get ones that are painfully understeery, or ones that sort of just make the car handle fantastically, and this one certainly does handle pretty fantastic. Straight line speed's also pretty good as well. 224 horsepower certainly is quite a lot, actually. I believe it's the second most powerful car we have here today. So yeah, the Escort Cosworth was pretty good. It has all the sort of attributes you need for a quick lap time around here. Decent amount of power, decent amount of grip. And yeah, the Escort was a pretty good car overall. Next up from 1993, we have the Renault Clio Williams, 142 horsepower, 2,233 pounds. The Renault Clio Williams is actually a car I do quite like a lot. This is a very, very fun little car. I don't know what it is about it either. It's just got that thing about it. Of course, this is also one of the most revered hot hatches in the world. People really do like this vehicle. And yeah, I like this vehicle as well. Around this track, it was fairly decent. It has a lot more power than the 80s hot hatches did. And so that means it has a bit more straight line speed. And you don't really notice the extra 200 pounds of weight. You can still throw this into corners, and it's just a lot of fun to drive, really. That's the best way to sum up the Clio Williams, and indeed pretty much all the cars here today, is they're just a lot of fun. Maybe not the best race cars in the world, unless, you know, the Escort could make a pretty decent race car, and indeed some of these later vehicles could also make good race cars. But for what they are, they're pretty decent cars. These are all relatively cheap as well, which is pretty good. And yeah, the Clio was a pretty good car to drive. Like, again, not really too much in the way of understeer. This one does have a lot more of a smoky front wheel per se. This one did get a lot more of sort of that strange one tyre fire going on, but other than that, yeah, Clio was a pretty good car. Next up we have one of my favourite hot hatches of all time. This is the Honda Civic Type R. This is the EK9 model, 182 horsepower, 2,403 pounds of weight. I love the Honda Civic Type R, particularly this model. It's a great car, this. It handles pretty goddamn well. It really doesn't feel front wheel drive. There's no understeer from this whatsoever. 182 horsepower is a pretty good amount for a hot hatch as well. Not so much that it causes issues, but just enough to get it around the track relatively quickly. It also doesn't weigh too much either, and of course it has Honda's amazing VTEC system, which is good. Here come the VTEC jokes and whatnot. Anyway, yeah, the Civic Type R was a pretty damn good car to drive around here. Yeah, I liked it. You can't really say too much about these retro hot hatches. This is the thing. They all drive relatively similar. If you want to sort of notice driving attributes, you really need a car that's got a lot more power. In these sort of lower PI, lower powered cars, handling between them, you can't really feel it too much, especially with the sort of front wheel drive cars. So they all drive fairly similar. So that's why I'm sort of not going too in depth with how these vehicles drive, because you can't really go too in depth with them. They all drive kind of similar. Next up we have a VW Golf Mark III. This is the VR6 model, 172 horsepower, 2,800 pounds. I was trying to get a toss up between whether I wanted to use the Volkswagen Corrado or the Golf VR6. I ended up going with this version just because this is my favourite model of GTI Golf. I love the Mark III GTI. I think this is by far the best looking of the Golfs, and yeah, I love that VR6 engine as well. Around this track though, this car did struggle a little bit. It does weigh an awful lot. The VR6 motor, I believe, is what sort of accounts for quite a bit of the weight, because the rest of these cars are sort of running your inline fours, save for one other car in this as well. They sort of run inline four engines, and they're very compact and don't weigh much. VR6, it does weigh quite a bit, and that does put a lot of weight on the front wheels. There might be a little bit more understeer in this vehicle than, say, the EK9 Civic or something like that, but overall the GTI Golf was pretty good. Between this and the Mark 1, which one would I pick? I would pick this. I just think it's a better vehicle personally, and it does a lot more of what I would like it to do. Good news with this car as well is it is very cheap, which is good. And I want to see if you can actually get that rear wheel cocking up like you can do on quite a few hot hatches in real life. I wonder if you can actually do that in this game. Next up, we're moving on to the really modern cars. Oh, by the way, that reminds me. I'm classing a retro hot hatch anything from the start of time to 2003. That was sort of my cut-off point for this, just to sort of get as many cars in as I wanted to. Anyway, Ford Focus RS, 212 horsepower, around 2,800 pounds of weight in this thing. The Focus RS was probably the most likely to put in a good lap time today. I drove one of these on Horizon 2 and I really liked it. I used it as a B-class rally car, I think it was really good. That was one of the earlier Horizon videos. I do recommend finding that one actually, because that was a very fun build on that car. Anyway, the Focus RS is a great handling car. This is one of the best handling hot hatches in the game. It probably is in real life as well, because this thing is known for being quite a nice handling car. Although it is known for being a little bit too direct on the steering, like you just point it and it'll go there. There's no sort of in between. You don't really feel that in Forza Motorsport 6, which is pretty good. Yeah, the Focus RS was a good car. It's a very good looking car. And yeah, probably one of my favourite hot hatches from the day. I do love the Mark 1 Focus. It's a great looking car. I'm not too sure about that gaping front end, but other than that, yeah, Focus RS is across the line. And finally today, here's something a little bit different. I was kind of torn between using either this or the R32 Golf. I decided on this in the end. This is the Renault Clio V6, 251 horsepower, 3,086 pounds of weight. Ironically, it weighs as much as an Enzo. We found that out in Season 2. Anyway, the V6 Clio is a very interesting car because it's the only one here today that doesn't have an engine in the front. It's actually a mid-engined car. It's also a rear-wheel drive car, which makes it very interesting. It actually has some sort of standout characteristics compared to these other hot hatches. The Clio V6 is a bit of a weird car to drive. You definitely can feel some understeer in this vehicle. You can sort of see it just jolting about a little bit, and it does kind of feel like it does that a little bit. You do have to be careful through the corners, just so the rear end doesn't kick out. Basically, this can be a bit of a twitchy car, especially if you upgrade it. And you really need to watch the back end on this, because it can just come round and meet it. So yeah, that's something that does happen. And yes, but overall, Clio V6 probably not the best car to drive here. I would probably recommend to you the Focus RS. However, if you're looking for something a little bit different in this space, definitely the Clio V6 is a pretty good choice, actually. Yeah, fairly decent car. Anyway, onto the times, and the Ford Focus RS takes the cake with the 128.252. Still slower than a Mini Cooper GP, but a pretty good time nonetheless. Clio V6, it was slow in Season 2, however, luckily in Season 3 it's done pretty well, a 128.400 for that. Escort Cosworth is lagging just a little bit behind with the 128.597, put it in 32nd, which is pretty good. EK9 Civic luckily came out pretty well, just getting beyond that 130 mark with a 129.798, which is pretty good. Golf GTI VR6, 132.984. Unfortunately, I think it was just the weight of that car which let it down a bit. Cleo Williams, 133.532, which is fairly respectable. And finally, the Fiesta and the Golf are, yeah, at the bottom of the board, shall we say. 36 for the Fiesta, 141.745, and the Golf was a second behind that. Yeah, I think the extra weight in the Golf just let it down a bit there. Anyway, friends, I want to thank you all very much for watching. Next time, in fact tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be taking a look at the modern hot hatches. So I want to thank you all very much for watching. My name's been TheRealEmile. Until next time, farewell.